Hey, everybody, and welcome to our second of two episodes looking at Johanna Spyri's Heidi. But before we journey back up the mountain, let's talk about our next episode. Ari and I have discussed Alfred Hitchcock a few times on the show, with looks at Rebecca and Dial M for Murder, and in our next episode, we'll be revisiting The Master of Suspense with a look at Rear Window. We'll be talking about the original short story that inspired the movie, Hitchcock's 1954 original starring Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly, and the 1998 remake starring Christopher Reeve and Daryl Hannah. And as an added bonus, we didn't want to leave out another movie inspired by Rear Window, 2007's Disturbia, starring Shia LaBeouf and David Morse. We won't be discussing it in detail on Adapter Parish because you can hear all about it on my other show, Multiplex Time Machine, a year-long weekly tribute to the movies of 2007 that I host with my best friend Ian Averill. Our look at Disturbia will be out this Friday, April 15th, and then the Rear Window episode of Adapter Parish will be out on Tuesday, April 26th. We hope you enjoy them. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections about today's episode or any others that you'd like to hear on the show, remember to email adapterparishcast@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you would share that with the world by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/adaptcast. We've got a patron-only community and our bi-weekly bonus show, Adapter Parish Plus, with episodes releasing every Tuesday between episodes of this show. We hope you check it out. Show notes from this and all other episodes can be found at adapterparishcast.com. And with that, on with the show, Adapter Parish, episode 114, Heidi, part 2. Hello and welcome to Adapter Parish, a podcast about adaptation. I'm Jeremy Latour.
I'm Ari Lipshaw, and this is Heidi, part 2. Look at us, recording an episode.
I know.
We're like almost ahead, because the part 1 just came out today.
A peek behind the curtains. We're trying something crazy, recording episodes early.
Slightly ahead.
Because we feel bad that we let things go and then missed an episode.
Yeah.
And we still feel like emotionally we're paying for it.
Yes. Physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
Spiritually.
I mean, in terms of our listeners, I feel like we're not because people have been nothing but kind and supportive.
Yeah, I don't think we have the kind of...
This pressure is internal.
I'm just trying to think like where external pressure would come from. I guess if you're part of like a podcast network and like if you miss an episode, people are actually losing money.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have that problem.
No, we don't.
We do not. Not even a little.
Heidi. Heidi. Here we are to talk about Heidi again. I mean, like, here's the thing. I feel like we don't need a big preamble like, oh, let's do some banter. What's happening in the world right now? The Oscars just happened 3 nights ago. Do you want to talk about anything crazy that happened at the Oscars?
No.
I don't think there's anything that we need to do that's topical. I don't think we need any banter. Let's just get right into Heidi.
Okay.
Where we last left our heroes.
Our old hero and our young hero and some goats.
Oh, I was talking about us. That's very sweet, but I was talking about us. We had just talked about the book, and we had talked about 6 adaptations of Heidi.
Yep.
Now, we're going to do quadrants at the end of the episode for everything. I think we agreed that it wasn't really worth kind of recapping all of them right now.
Yeah.
But I thought it might be good just so we can kind of establish some baselines going into this episode where we're going to look at 6 more. What was our favorite? And which one maybe was the most batshit?
So we were in close agreement that our favorite one was the 1974 BBC miniseries, the one that is totally unavailable to anyone except this one person on YouTube that found it in their grandma's attic on VHS.
Thank God for that person.
Thank God for that
for
person, because it was very good. It was very book accurate and very, very nice and very sweet.
That to me was the high watermark coming into this episode. Like, if anything was going to be good, it had to beat this one.
Yes. And then, again, as if in contrast, 4 years later, we have the most batshit one that we have seen from the years 1937 to 1978, which was the New Adventures of Heidi. Is that right?
Yeah, the New Adventures of Heidi.
The New Adventures of Heidi?
Yeah, where it's modern day and she goes to New York and it's Colorado doubling for Switzerland and LA doubling for New York, which it didn't
Burl
need to.
Ives is in it, and he gets captured by a wild man and goes blind, but then is better. It's very weird.
Whole subplot with a French chef and the man and the woman, they both don't like each other, but they're in love. And she has trouble getting a coat on. It was a whole thing. So that's where we're at. I say we just jump in. Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Picture it. 1982. You saw a really good cartoon of Charlotte's Web like 9 years
It
ago.
was pretty good.
It had that rat song in it that was good.
Yeah, rat
And
songs are fun. I love a rat song.
Love a rat song. And you hear that the same animators are doing Heidi, which is kind of like Charlotte's Web.
Hang on. One of my favorite things in Charlotte's Web were the songs.
Yeah.
So what's this one?
It's Heidi's song.
Oh, literally called Heidi's song?
It's called Heidi's song.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure this will be fantastic.
Yep. And also featuring singing rats with the voice of Sammy Davis Jr.
That's weird. Should we get into that now or should we save it for a minute?
I mean, I guess I kind of spoiled it a little bit by referring to the rat song in Charlotte's Web. Apparently, this group of animators cannot impossible to make a animated version of a children's book without a rat singing a song.
Which is fine when the book also has a rat in it.
Yeah, right, because Charlotte's Web, there's a rat character, so it would make sense that he would be in the movie.
So I'm trying to cast my mind back to episode 50 when we did Charlotte's Web. Here's what I remember, because I grew up on Charlotte's Web like many people, but I hadn't watched it for a really long time. And I feel like our general reaction to Charlotte's Web was there's a lot of really good stuff in it, but it's not great.
We found that it was not as good as we remembered.
Yeah.
When looked at through a critical eye.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you and I both noticed in Charlotte's Web was that like some of the songs were very specific to the plot, but like some of them were not.
Yeah.
And I think Heidi's song suffers from some of the same issues, which is there were a couple of songs that are very plot driven.
Yep. I mean, literally, I'm looking at the list of songs right here.
Yeah.
There is a song called Heidi.
Yeah.
Sung by the grandfather.
Yeah.
You're not going to put that in anything other than Heidi.
There's a song called She's a Nothing, sung by Miss Rottenmeier and Sebastian, which I guess is sort of medium plot driven because I just re-listened to it right before this to kind of refresh my memory. It is plot driven in the sense that it is relevant to the plot, but like it doesn't have anything about Heidi.
Yeah.
It's just a song about someone not being very important.
Yeah. I'm kind of torn between Ode to a Rat and A Christmassy Day. Remember it was like the second song in the movie?
Yeah, they had a Christmassy day.
But it literally has nothing to do with Heidi.
Yeah.
The plot has nothing to do with Christmas. It's just, it happens to be Christmas.
Yeah.
And they're singing a song about Christmas.
Yeah.
Could have been in any movie. It's just like, was it Fern running around with Wilbur at the beginning of Charlotte's Web?
Sing
She's
a song
got a
about
whole
friendship.
song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a song about friendship that could be in anything where characters are friends.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with Charlotte's Web.
Yes.
And then, let's just spoil it. So at the end, she gets locked in the basement of the Sesamans.
Yes.
Rottenmeier locks her in a basement. And there's all these rats. And this is actually one of those things that I was kind of happy about because, it cuts. Like all of the rats are coming up to her and closing in on her or anything. And then we cut to Peter and all of the animal friends who are going to come rescue her.
They come on the sled to save her.
Right. Because the owl knows where she is and the owl can lead them all to where she is. It's ridiculous and I kind of hate it.
Very strange.
But we cut to her in the basement, and the most beautiful thing has happened. She's made friends with all the rats.
Like you do?
Because she's Heidi.
Right.
She kind of wins people over, right? And she wins all these rats over. So they've created an expectation. They've subverted the expectation, which I've always maintained is a good thing. And then they create drama by having the head rat. And I want to be clear, it's spelled Ratte. This is Head Rat. That is the character's name.
Okay.
Played by, as you said, Sammy Davis Jr. So he comes in and he sings a song called Ode to a Rat, which is all about what it is to be a rat and the whole purpose of it in the story. Like, you talk about being plot driven. It is plot driven.
Yeah.
It's very plot driven. Has nothing to do with the plot of Heidi, but it has to do with the plot of this ridiculous movie.
It has to do with the plot of being a rat.
Right? And all he's doing, it's just a song about him singing to the other rats about what it is to be a rat. And when you're a rat, you're supposed to be scary and blah, blah, blah. So she's done all of this work to win them over. And immediately all of the rats are like, oh no, we do want to eat your face.
Yeah.
And so luckily, Peter and all the animal friends show up and they save her. And we have a big fight in the basement between all the animals and all the rats. But the entire reason the rats are against her is because this one character who we've never seen before waltzes in and sings a song about what it is to be a rat in an adaptation of Johanna Spyri's Heidi.
Yeah. And there's an evil dog in it.
Is the dog evil or is the dog just in with a bad crowd?
He's a very cute dog, but he's evil, I think.
Is he Rottenmeier's dog?
Yeah.
He's a long dog with short legs, and we like a long dog with short legs.
We do. All right. I feel like we really skipped to the end. I assume you kind of want to circle back here.
I do. I have a few notes about this one. You already mentioned before Charlotte's Web. We talked about it at length. I want to be clear about something because I feel like, I'll go ahead and make an assumption. I feel like there's a Venn diagram of people who have seen Charlotte's Web and people who have seen Heidi's song.
Yeah.
I feel like the first circle is much bigger than the second circle.
Yeah.
I think way more people have seen Charlotte's Web than Heidi's song. The best comparison I can come up with for how good the animation is in this, I think millennials will understand this, but I think maybe people outside that generation will get it as well. Okay, hey, sweetie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you remember the movie Aladdin?
Yes.
Did you see it in the theater?
I think so.
Okay. Animation in Aladdin. It's pretty good, right?
It's good.
It's kind of beautiful animation.
Yeah.
Like Disney feature animation.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever watch the Aladdin TV show?
Yeah, sure did.
How would you compare the animation of the TV show to the movie?
Not as good.
Not nearly as good, right? Yeah. That's the disparity between the quality of animation in Charlotte's Web and Heidi's song.
Yes.
The problem is the animation in Charlotte's Web is about the quality of the Aladdin TV show.
Right.
So you're already starting much lower.
The bar is lower. Yeah.
So the animation in Heidi's song is terrible.
Yeah,
it's just awful. And it's Hanna-Barbera, and this is one of, I think, 4 movies that they did that had nothing to do with like the Hanna-Barbera stable of characters.
Right.
And so Charlotte's Web is one of them. This is another one. And then there were 2 more that I didn't bother writing down. I apologize. I know that that's poor research.
That's okay.
But I just cannot express enough how bad the animation is in this.
Yeah.
Like occasionally there are these little moments where there's some really fluid animation happening, usually during especially the dream sequence with all of the monsters and the gnomes up on the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Night on Bald Mountain ripoff that's in the middle of this movie about Heidi.
Yeah. No,
Some of that animation was pretty good, but I question adding that scene.
Yeah.
Because as I say, there is an entire tribute to Night on Bald Mountain in the first act of this movie because she's met the grandfather and he decides, here's what I'm going to do because I don't want this girl to be here. I'm going to have fun scaring her, and I'm going to tell her about all the demons and gnomes and creepy things that live in the woods. And so she goes to sleep that night and she has a very intense dream about all of those creatures, and it is very colorful and very insane. And I was like here for it half the time.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't the rest of it. But like basically I feel like this dream sequence looked at the little Dutch girl scene in the Shirley Temple version and said, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Because it has nothing to do with Heidi and it's insane.
Yeah. Yep. I have nothing to add.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Let's talk about Marjorie Gray as Heidi.
This was very strange.
2 things about Marjorie Gray as Heidi. Marjorie Gray is Sheldon Harnick's wife. Sheldon Harnick, famously of the group that wrote Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah. Among others.
She's the voice of Heidi. And I remember listening to this going like, whoever's doing this voice, it's definitely that thing where it's like a grown woman doing the voice of a kid.
Yeah.
But she's not even trying to sound like a kid. Like, this Heidi is 40 if she's a day.
Well, I mean, Sheldon Harnick is now, today, 90 if he's a day.
Right.
And this was 1982.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, 40 years ago, yeah, she was like, what, 40, 45?
Yeah. And I will say this, if you Google pictures of her and Sheldon Harnick, they're adorable.
Yeah.
And they go to lots of Broadway premieres and lots of events, and they are just the cutest little couple. But I did not like her casting in this movie.
Yeah.
I didn't think it worked at all. Now, moving on, you already mentioned the song with Rottenmeier.
Yeah.
Where it's her and Sebastian. Now, Sebastian, he's kind of he's like, what are the 2 guys in 101 Dalmatians?
Oh, yeah, the 2
Jasper
dudes.
and Horace?
Yeah, like he's a goon in
Right.
this one. Yeah, he's like her goon.
Right, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Because Sebastian was my favorite character in the book. And I've seen him be lots of things, but this is the first time I'd seen him be like a villain.
Yeah.
And I did not care for it even a little. So that whole Rottenmeier sequence she's just crazy and evil. And I remember her being green. Like, was she green?
Yeah,
was she basically just Maleficent?
Yeah, she is the stepmother from Cinderella.
Yes.
And then she turns into Maleficent in the song because, again, it's sort of Heidi's imagination.
That's what it is.
Running away with her, and they turn into these sort of like evil creatures.
Mm-hmm. I only have one other note about this one.
Okay.
And it's just taken us right back to Charlotte's Web. The voice of Fern in Charlotte's Web is Pamela Ferdin.
Yeah.
She also plays Clara in this movie.
Yes.
And yeah, it's 9 years later, but she sounds exactly the same.
Sure.
And it was weird hearing Fern's voice come out of Clara.
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard this voice in other things. It's
Right.
not like she's this voice actor who's had a million credits, you know? Like, you pick any big voice actor and they sound like 20 different characters that you know.
Mhm.
And so Clara just sounds like Fern from Charlotte's Web. There's also a whole thing about her talking about how she's always wanted a pet. And it just sounded like Fern talking about wanting Wilbur. And it was weird. This is not a comment about the quality of the movie. It's just a comment about what it was like to watch this movie. But this
It's more
movie,
about you than anything else.
it really is. I mean, this movie, I feel like we should move on, right?
Yeah.
But this movie was insane and not good.
Yeah, it was both. Again, if we're sort of ranking things on the insanity scale,
Yeah.
The New Adventures of Heidi was enjoyable to watch because it was so crazy and you never knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
This was very predictable, even in its wackiness, and also boring.
I'm really annoyed at what you just said because you're right.
Yeah.
And I kind of came into this episode thinking I am going to make the case that Heidi's song out crazied the New Adventures of Heidi. But like, you're right. It didn't.
Yeah.
And
There was an element of, I think the predictability of it is the thing that I would point to.
just like a cruddy kids movie. And it's a cruddy kids movie that I'm sure some people who had the VHS when they were a kid grew up on and love.
Yeah.
And I have movies like that too, but we watched it as people nearing 40 for the first time, and it did not do it for us.
Yes.
I think we should move on. What do you think about that?
Let's do it.
I want you to talk about this one because I'm scared about what we're going to say and what people might think, so I'm just going to hand this back over to you.
I guess you sometimes make a lot of assumptions about how dear people hold things. In your research, did you come across people saying, I mean, I assume you did, like you came across people saying like, this is my favorite Heidi. I loved it as a kid.
I spend a lot of time on Letterboxd, and
Yeah.
that's usually one of the ways I have to kind of gauge what the general reaction is to something because it's a lot of user reviews, but I feel like it's user reviews from people who love movies.
Yeah.
And boy, this has a lot of like 4 and 5 star reviews.
I guess I would quibble that may be a really self-selecting audience, because why
It
would
is.
you go to Letterboxd and write a review about a Heidi from 1993 unless it was something you remembered like fondly from your childhood?
But that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are people who remember it fondly from their childhood.
Yeah, but
There's other ones that like did not have a lot of good reviews.
sure. Also, one that we're going to come to in a minute that one of our listeners pointed out had perhaps the fewest reviews of anything we've ever watched for the show ever.
Yes, that is going to happen.
We'll talk about that in a minute. So I did not see this as a child, which, I mean, maybe I did and forgot, but I think I would remember. It surprises me that I didn't see it because it is the kind of thing that I would have seen.
Yeah.
And would have probably liked.
Like it reminded me so intensely of the like Megan Follows Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah, it had
just
that.
in terms of production values and feel, that kind of thing.
It looks, I mean, we just sort of did a quick recap just to kind of, again, refresh our memories. And it looks expensive. Like when they go to Frankfurt particularly, and you were kind of like fast forwarding through, the scenes in their house, and you could see all the costumes and the set dressing and like this rich person's house, and then of course they're up in the Alps. Like it looks expensive. It looks like somebody spent a lot of time making this visually. I'm not going to say stunning because I wouldn't go that far, but visually like a movie, like a real movie.
I mean, I think it's worth saying at this point that this did air on the Disney Channel.
Yeah, it aired on the Disney Channel.
So it aired. Can I just give some quick background?
Yeah.
So it aired 2 nights. It's about 3 hours long. Aired on 2 nights, July 18th and 19th, 1993 on the Disney Channel. Directed by Michael Rhodes, written by Gene Rosenberg, and starred Noli Thornton as Heidi, who we know primarily from both an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation and an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yes. And it starred, if you ever saw Sarah Plain and Tall, which I think a lot of us did, if you're of this generation, the one with Christopher Walken and Glenn Close. The young lady who played the oldest daughter in Sarah Plain and Tall is Clara in this.
Lexi Randall.
Yeah, because I was like, where do I know that face? And it was this.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely people who are notable in this. Like Jason Robards is the grandfather.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him in a minute.
He's Jason Robards.
Yeah.
He's Hollywood royalty, Jane Seymour.
Yeah.
Famously pretty Jane Seymour as Fraulein Rottenmeier. Easily the prettiest Fraulein Rottenmeier across 12 versions. I think she's prettier than Gene Simmons.
I have another candidate, but we'll come to that.
And then finally, Sean Phillips as Frau Sessamon, who you were very excited about.
Well, it was so funny because you've never seen I, Claudius.
Nope.
And I got very excited. to see Sean Phillips, and I said just sort of casually, wow, it's funny to see her play a sympathetic character. And you, in all innocence, went, is she not a nice person in I, Claudius, or something like that? And I just thought that was so funny, because if you've seen I, Claudius, she plays Livia, who is like literally the bane of everyone's existence for 70 years. Like over the entire course of the series, she has a lot of people killed. Like a lot of people killed.
It's one of the daily times that you look at me and say,
"Oh, you sweet summer child." She is one of those people, man, with just a bone structure. She looks,
oh yeah,
she looks. I don't know why I always get really bogged down in the question of whether people are still alive. I think she is not.
you know this stuff is pretty easy to find, right?
She's 88 years old.
Good for her.
Yeah. She's one of those people that sort of looked old
Yep.
at 40, but looks the same now,
Mhm.
you know?
I mean, and you mentioned bone structure. She definitely has the second best bone structure in this movie.
Yeah. Who's the first?
Jane Seymour.
There you go.
Jane Seymour, by the way, who is just about to start doing a little TV show called Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman that I watched religiously after school when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I got a big old crush on Dr. Mike, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. That show is fantastic.
Yep.
I'm sure it's not problematic at all.
I'm looking at my notes here.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of animal-related quibbles.
Okay. Was that your first note?
Yes. My first note is in
Mhm.
all caps. No fucking sheep.
Yes.
The movie begins with a flashback to the genesis of the grandfather becoming like a misanthrope and going up to live on the mountain. And we see him having an argument with his son,
Mm-hmm.
who I think might
It's
have
just
a different name.
John.
It's just John.
because
No,
the grandfather's Tobias
the
in
grandfather's.
this one.
This is the kind of change that I don't understand why you
Yeah.
would make. The son in the book is clearly Tobias, so why would they call the grandfather Tobias and call the son John? It doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
So they're having an argument, and we hear, and this is Jason Robards and a young man, and we hear them arguing, and the subject of the argument, the fierce, violent argument, is whether or not they should start raising sheep along with the goats. And Jason Robards just screams out in just a blind fury, like, oh, you'll have sheep on this mountain over my dead body. Like, words to that effect. Like, he is
Yeah.
so angry. Then the son is like, I'm going to go away. You're never going to see me again. Blah, blah, blah. Here, come
His
on.
young wife.
His young wife and their little baby.
Mhm.
And they start going down the mountain through the little like forest, when out of a clear blue sky the lightning strikes, and it strikes a tree, and the tree falls on them, and they are presumably killed, and they think everyone's been killed, and all the townspeople go rushing, including the
I don't understand why all the townspeople are up the mountain.
I don't know. They go rushing in, all the townspeople, including the preacher, who, like, all we see is him holding up the baby in the most awkward position possible, like he's about to toss a football.
He looks like he was instructed by the director
Yeah.
to make sure that the audience understands that they got an actual baby for this.
Yes.
Because some of the shots, the baby is not a real baby.
Right.
But
like when the tree is falling
Like
down.
you need to hold up the baby to make sure that the people at home watching the Disney Channel know this is
we got a real baby.
baby,
But
and we put it under a tree.
But I don't think he has really any dialogue at this point, but the look on his face is one of the strangest looks I've ever seen on any. He's just like super bug-eyed and horrified.
This is John Quentin as the pastor. I feel like every now and then you get really, really honed in on a particular person in something, and he was your obsession throughout this entire experience.
He was just in a different film. He was at a 12 the whole time, and everyone else was maybe at a 7.
Mhm.
He was monologuing. He was soliloquizing. He was performing Shakespeare
Mhm.
in this Disney movie. And so he holds up the baby. The camera pans to Jason Robards'
I think
face.
this is where it lost us.
And
This was the
he
moment. Hang on, before you say what happens, I just want to say this is the moment where I looked at you and I said, I am really scared. Because my understanding is that a lot of people grew up on this one and love it. But I think we are both agreed that what we're watching right now is insane.
Yeah.
And is losing us.
Because he basically just looks down the barrel of the camera and screams.
Can you read my first note?
Ah! He just screams. And so then from then on, anytime anything happened that involved the old man, we would just look at each other and go, ah!
This version of the grandfather is extremely dysregulated.
Yes.
Like, let's be clear about that. This is a man who has no concept whatsoever about how to manage his own emotions.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Like, it never stops. He never really grows.
No.
He's always dysregulated the entire 3 hours.
Like, Heidi keeps coming there and back and there and back, and he's mad at her the whole time, and like he makes her sleep out in the shed like on multiple occasions.
This was fantastic because in a lot of versions, like, she says, I'm gonna go sleep out in the shed, and the way they set it up in this one is one of the goats just had a goatling. Why does my brain want to say goatling?
A kid.
A kid. Thank you. Couldn't remember that word. It's a really obscure one. And he comes out and she says, was there a baby? And he says, yeah, it's not going to make it through the night. And she goes, what? You can't say that. And she runs. She said, I'm going to go take care of it. And she goes inside and she spends the night with it. And the next morning, like, the goat is fine. And I just wanted desperately for the thing to happen is for her to come walking out of the shed in the morning really dejected. And he goes, so? And she goes, it died. That's right. It's tough up here on the mountain, isn't it?
But I wanted something slightly different. Because the goat that she is tending is fine.
Oh, this is like every movie that ever has like a quote unquote newborn baby played by a 6-month-old chubby baby.
Yeah.
Like this kid is old.
The goat is enormous and fine.
Yeah.
And she's just like hanging out with it, and it's doing its thing, and they're sleeping through the night and blah blah blah. And she wakes up in the morning, and the thing I wanted to have happen is for her to say, "Grandfather, look, it made it through the night." And for him to say, "Oh, no, that goat was fine. I meant that one." And there's like this tiny gross dead goat
in the
over
corner. Like, the reason we were both thinking about all of this is because this one was two things.
Yeah.
Earnest.
Yeah.
And kind of nothing.
Yeah.
Like, all it was earnest.
Yeah.
I feel like it didn't have a sense of humor. It didn't have self-awareness. It was just a really, really earnest movie. And like, the book isn't just a really, really earnest book. The book has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And all of that was gone in this version.
Yeah, it took itself really seriously, and I feel like if you're going to be a movie that takes yourself really seriously, you sort of have to earn that by hitting the beats in a way that's not comical, and this did not do that, and so it was even more distracting when little things happened, like everyone constantly referring to Peter as a shepherd.
Oh, yeah, that was ridiculous.
We've already made up a whole plot to establish that there are no sheep on the mountain, because over the grandfather's dead body would there be sheep on the mountain. So why does everyone keep calling him a shepherd? There's a perfectly good word for what he is, which is a goat herd. And he's referred to in the book and every single other movie as the goat herd. So why do they call him a shepherd when there's no sheep?
I feel like a lot of the versions of Heidi that we've watched are a really good lesson in the kind of things that you put up with when something is engaging. Because, you know, this is going to come up again, so I'm just planting the seed now. You know, you look at that 1974 BBC one. It's a BBC show from the 1970s.
Yeah, the production values are nothing.
It's garbage.
Yeah.
Like, it's barely better than community theater. The thing it has going for it is writing and performance and directing. Like, it's really, really well made, even though it's made for £10, right?
Yeah.
You forgive a lot of stuff when it's engaging. And this one is the complete opposite end of the spectrum in terms of lavish production.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have anything that made the 1974 version compelling.
Yeah.
It's just boring.
Yeah, it's
and
like
earnest
it's
the entire time.
It's like the 1990s Little Princess, remember? It was so beautiful, and just like any given shot was just perfect. This wasn't as pretty as that, but like
no.
But it looked good. Like I liked Heidi's look. I liked the grandfather's look just fine. I liked Clara's look. Like all the scenes in Frankfurt, like I said before, it looks expensive.
Yeah.
All their clothes look really good.
Jane Seymour's really pretty.
That all is fine. I think it takes itself too seriously.
Yeah.
And then you can't forgive some of the ridiculous things that it does, because it's taking that ridiculousness really seriously.
Mm-hmm. I guess my biggest problem with it the entire time was just we didn't even talk about, like, let's just talk about it. The grandmother's really unsettling and dies. Like they straight kill her in this movie.
Heidi keeps walking into rooms and the grandmother's like eyes are open, which is fine because she's blind, but her mouth is hanging open. So there's at least like 3 jump scares with the blind grandmother that I'm sure were not meant to here's what I bet the movie makers didn't want you to think. That's like the scene from Psycho when they go down in the basement and the mother's skeleton whips around. But that's what it made me think of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that's not what they wanted.
No,
I'm sure that was not their intention.
It really isn't. So like that's a whole thing. But like more than anything, in the book, how long does it take the grandfather to decide to be kind to Heidi?
Like immediately.
Immediately. And in a lot of versions, they make the decision, well, he doesn't decide immediately because he has to go on a little bit of a journey at the beginning of the story, and he doesn't want her to be there, but then she wins him over. This is like the only one where they decide, oh, no, he's awful the whole time.
Even at the end, when she comes back from Frankfurt, he's like really angry with her. And
Yeah.
he's like, no, you can't. You have to go sleep in the shed again.
Like, it's like they looked at everything and said, what is the grandfather's lesson? What is the lesson he needs to learn? Because the lesson that he needs to learn, I think I said this in part 1, the lesson that he needs to learn is not you should be there for Heidi. He already knows he should be there for Heidi. The reason she doesn't want to leave is because he is there for her and she loves him.
Yeah.
The thing he needs to learn is that he needs to be part of the community.
Yeah.
He needs to rejoin the human race. And in this one, that's not even in it.
It's not even
just
in it.
You have to be here. It made me so mad. After we finished it, I was just like sitting in the living room. I was looking up at the TV and it had the like, you know, they always show like a shot from the movie as like the background of you have just watched Heidi from 1993, that
Sure.
kind of thing. The shot was the shot that's in tons of the versions, which is where he finally goes back to church with her.
Yeah.
And they're sitting in the church and I'm looking at him, looking at her, and he's got his suit on and they're clearly singing in church. And then I just called you in from the other room because I thought I was going crazy. And I asked you, did this scene actually happen in the movie?
It must have been cut.
Literally never shown in
It
the
must
movie.
have been cut for this version or something.
I just got to the end and can you just please read my last note because this was a big revelation for me.
I think I hated this.
I don't like hating things. I hate hating things. It's not fun to hate things. And when I say hate things, I mean hate movies.
Yeah.
I think I hated this.
Yeah.
Like, it did nothing for me. And like I said, I'm really scared about saying these things because if you love this and we have alienated you, I feel really, really bad because I also am a person who loves things. And if this is a thing you love, then I think you should go on loving it because it was very pretty. And you know what else was very pretty in it?
Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour was very pretty.
Let's move on.
Okay. 12 years later,
It's 2005.
we get a British movie directed by Paul Marcus, written by Brian Finch. I was kind of looking forward to this one because we get Max von Sydow as the grandfather.
Mhm.
I love Max von Sydow. I don't know where to start with this one because it was weird. Let me ask you this, if this is a fair characterization. It had some of the highest highs, but also some of the lowest lows.
Yes. It started out great.
Yeah.
Like really positive.
Shockingly good.
Shockingly good. I like the way that it began kind of with Heidi and Deet on the train. Dee, I was very excited because I have never seen this actress in anything except one television series, but it is a television series that I hold very dear to my heart and quote probably daily, which is Father Ted. And Pauline McLynn, who plays Mrs. Doyle in Father Ted, was Dee in this. I've literally never seen her in anything else, like much less like a 19th century novel adaptation, right? I thought she was really good.
She was fantastic.
I thought she was really good. She was one of the best things in this movie.
Yeah.
Her acting was excellent, and she had, speaking of a sense of humor, like she really had a sense of humor. I thought about Dee Dee's character. Like she played her very funny. Not like broad, but like funny.
Right.
Because she is funny. Because
Yeah.
she's ridiculous. And I think she embraced that.
Can I just talk about like the first 5 minutes of this?
Yeah.
Because the whole first 5 minutes, you've got Dee Dee explaining to Heidi like who the grandfather is, or I think Dee Dee's talking to someone else. But bottom line, you're getting this voiceover about who the grandfather is. And so the whole thing starts with the grandfather walking from his cabin all the way down into Dorfley.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a perfect introduction because it's just him in the town and you're seeing everybody react to him and you're hearing the voiceover of someone saying, here are all the things that people thought he did.
Yeah, it's kind of like the opening shot of Muppet Christmas Carol.
It is. No, it really is. And I honestly, that is, I think, the highest praise you could possibly give something.
Yeah.
But like it works. It works really, really well.
He definitely like interacts with the town in this version a lot more. Like when Heidi's living with him, like they go down to kind of sell goats and sell cheeses, and like they go to like the market day clearly, as opposed to the other one where they never, we were just talking about, where they like never come down.
Mhm.
There's just more interaction, which I liked. They do something really interesting. Obviously, this is an English language version, but they do something kind of interesting with the accents, where Dee Dee and Heidi are Irish actors
Mhm.
with Irish accents, but then when they go to Frankfurt, everyone has English accents, which I thought was really interesting, and sort of just an interesting way to show that they are a little more like rustic and from a different place, and they speak differently.
Yeah, because you've got Geraldine Chaplin as Rottenmeier.
Right.
There's literally a moment where she does some really good kind of physical comedy, some physical acting, and you were like, well, of course. Of
Well,
course, you're the daughter of Charlie Chaplin. You're going to understand how to do physical comedy.
yeah, I think what I said was she did something really funny, like she like looked in a door and then she had to like slam it behind her really quick or something like that, and I said her dad invented physical comedy, and you were like, well, not really, but
I'm a Buster Keaton man. That's all I'm saying.
I like Buster Keaton too.
But she is playing very, very posh
Yes.
British. What exactly what you're talking about. There is
Yes.
that kind of the one thing that makes it fall apart a little bit is that Max von Sydow is not from the British Isles at all.
His accent is a little muddy in this.
Yeah, but he's so good it doesn't matter.
He is pretty good. I mean, I think this one really hits the tone pretty well.
Yeah.
As opposed to the 1993 one that we were just talking about, that we both felt took itself too seriously. I feel like this one, like the actors playing the characters kind of understand some of the humor of what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, those are the good things.
I mean, there's a lot of. Can I run through some good things?
Yeah.
This is one of the first ones that acknowledges that one of the reasons why the grandfather might have some kind of problem with Heidi being there is because she reminds him of his son.
Right.
This is I don't understand why we watch so many decades of Heidi's, and this is the first one to actually say, when I look at her, I actually see her. Because we were talking about the BBC version from 74, there is a thing where the grandmother says, and because you really like this
who
part.
Does she look like?
Like, who does she favor? And he says, I don't see anything. And she says, no, she looks... But, like, that's acknowledging the idea that it could be possible, but this is the first one where he's actually, like, it's basically implied, no, it's actually hard to look at you because you look like my son and I love my son.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's not in the book at all.
No.
And I just think it's a sign of a good screenwriter who's kind of willing to go somewhere emotionally,
Mhm.
like a good adapter screenwriter who's
Yeah.
sort of willing to take sort of an emotional motivation leap that's not present in the source material. And I we've seen that in a lot of other things. You know what it makes me think of? I just feel like every episode of the show is getting more and more like, that other one we watched, other thing we watched. But the Ruth Wilson Jane Eyre that we both really liked, where it was like she wants a family.
Yeah.
Someone saw that, and that is what that was. They made that their North Star, and all of her actions were motivated by that, even though like it's there in the book for sure, but it's not like her singular purpose. I don't know. I just like when someone who's adapting something is willing to kind of go somewhere realistic emotionally.
Yeah. Max von Sydow is a treasure. He has my favorite line from any version of Heidi.
Go ahead.
Because he has a great relationship with the pastor and a great relationship with the people in the town. I say great. They hate him.
Yeah.
And he hates them too, and that's fine. And there's a scene where he's talking with the pastor. This is after Heidi has already left, and the pastor says, hey, we haven't seen your granddaughter in a while. Everything okay? And the grandfather looks at the pastor and just says, in the most Max von Sydow-y way you possibly can, says, didn't you hear, pastor? I ate her. And then turns around and walks back up the mountain. And it's glorious, and I loved it.
It was good
writing. It was
writing.
beautiful. Here's another thing I loved. I have been looking forward to something for the longest time. Because when I read the book, I already mentioned Sebastian's my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
And I just pictured him as being kind of young.
Yeah.
And then in every version, he's always either like late middle-aged or old.
Right.
And in this one, he's played by an actor named Del Sinnott. It was everything I ever wanted in a portrayal of the character of Sebastian.
Yeah, he was like super young and cute and fun.
He was amazing and so funny and so compelling. I'm just going to say this. He's going to show up on my list for best cast when we do our spectacular at the end of the year.
There you go.
It is a beautiful, beautiful interpretation of the character of Sebastian, and it made me so happy. It's everything I ever wanted.
So one person we haven't really talked about is Emma Bolger as Heidi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she is so charming.
Mm-hmm.
I think she gives one of the best child actor performances we've seen, certainly up to this point.
Yeah.
She just has a lot of personality, but not like in a sweet Shirley Temple way. I don't know. I think she's really fun. What did you think?
I loved her.
Yeah.
That she just had, and like as you say, she had tons of personality. Like the one moment that I felt like she really, the one moment where she won me over so much because I already liked her because I already really liked this version was she goes to the church and she goes up to the top of the church and there's always the scene where she gets the kittens because the guy who like runs the church says, "I got these cats. Do you want to see some kittens?" And in this one, it's the only one where he says, "Yeah, I gotta find him a home because if I can't," and she goes, "What?" He says, "Well, the bucket." And she just goes, "You wouldn't." And it's just such a mature thing for her to do. And she's so beautifully shocked.
And then later there's a really cute continuation of that because she's talking to Sebastian and Sebastian's saying like, "Yeah, I'm going to have to get rid of these cats." And she goes, "Not the bucket."
Not the bucket.
And he goes,
"Oh, good Lord, no, miss. What do you take me for?"
Yeah.
So that's all I've got for good stuff.
And that's a lot of good stuff.
It is a lot.
Like, we really enjoyed watching this. I think, here's what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it stuck the landing.
Nope.
You know, I watch a lot of gymnastics, and sometimes someone's doing a real good routine, and they're flipping and dipping, and they're doing all kinds of stuff. You know, they're on their floor exercise, or they're on the balance beam, and they've got to basically do their dismount, like their last big tumble, or they've got to come off. They do their flippy dips, and it's like this big final thing, and then they fall right on their butt. That's what it leaves you with, right?
Mhm.
And like they'll often get a really poor score from the judges because that's sort of the final impression that you've made. Even if you did a really good job up until then, if you literally fall on your butt, like coming off the balance beam, like you're going to get a very poor score.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things happened as we were watching that made us fear that the production was a little jankier than they were trying to portray.
And this is exactly what I was talking about before. Like, why is the 1974 one so endearing despite its production flaws?
Yeah.
And the fact that it cost no money. Because then we watched this one, and
Well-
I would say it was not. I would say its flaws didn't endear it to us.
Yeah, I just think like maybe it wasn't taking itself seriously in terms of the performance, but I think it was sort of trying to hide some of the low budgetness of the production in
Yeah.
ways that didn't work. And so when it became clear that I'm just going to put it right out there. Heidi and the grandfather go sliding down the mountain. It's 1881. They're on a sled, and you see telephone wires behind them.
Yep.
All the way down the mountain.
Big wide shot telephone wires
Big wide
going
shot.
down the back. Maybe they're power lines. You know,
I thought maybe it was like a ski lift, and you didn't think so.
no.
But certainly a modern construction. And the funny thing is, I went and watched the trailer to refresh my memory for the show, and it does show that same shot, but it's zoomed way in, so you don't see the telephone lines in the shot in the trailer. And I just thought, like, I understand they're trying to kind of get their money's worth of the fact that they actually were clearly on location on a mountain, but come on, you got to zoom the shot in a little bit, right? Like, you're a
Someone
filmmaker.
screwed up.
You're a filmmaker. Like, you got to hide that, right? Like, there's a way to do that.
And it's kind of full of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in the third act, I feel like it was like this 1-2 punch where we'd really been enjoying it and its flaws were not scuttling it. We were acknowledging its flaws and we were laughing at its flaws, but we were also so excited about so many good things that were in it. And then the first thing happens, which is she gets back from Frankfurt and she goes up to the house and the grandfather won't see her.
Yeah.
And we had already come out of the 93 one going, why is the grandfather awful the whole time?
That was a bad decision to make.
Right?
Yeah.
And then in this one, Max von Sydow is better with her. There's actually a beautiful scene in this one that isn't in any of the other ones where when Dita takes her back to Frankfurt, there's always, she's either stealing her or there's subterfuge. In this one, it is her and the grandfather sitting across the table from each other having a really communicative negotiation about why Heidi should go to Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And Heidi's in the room and they're both there.
Yeah.
Like, they're all there, all communicating, and it's a really beautiful scene. And he's really expressing how much he wants her to stay. So we were really excited that this wasn't going to be like the 93 version. And then she gets back from Frankfurt and he's basically like, I don't want to talk to you, and closes the door and ignores her.
Yeah.
We were just like, well, what is this? What is this coming at? This was a bad decision.
Yeah.
And then the next thing happens because Clara comes.
Claire's fine in this, by the way. She's a cute young actress. I think she does a pretty good job.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone has to show Clara's realizing that she can walk in a different way. This one decided Heidi's gonna fall off a cliff into a ravine, and Peter's trying to pull her up, and Clara is there, and in order for them to do it, Clara has to walk.
Yeah.
Because
And
Peter's
hold
already,
on to Peter's
Right.
legs.
Because Peter's already smashed her wheelchair, and the grandfather brought him up, and then he shows up, and there's this whole thing where they have to like pull her out of the ravine, and Clara can walk, and they're all very excited about it. It is some of the worst blue screen. Like, this is like $5 blue screen. It is really bad. It is so apparent that this little actress is not actually hanging over her
She is
ravine.
in no peril.
Not only is that distracting, the whole moment doesn't work. And it's just peril out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Clara doesn't need that. Her story doesn't need that. It doesn't need to be like the result of an emergency that she realizes she can walk. That's not heightening things for any reason.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Yeah, it didn't stick the landing. I almost don't want to recommend it because I think you're going to watch it and be disappointed, but like maybe just watch the first half, I guess.
I'm 100% going to recommend watching the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, watch the whole thing. Because even with that shit, Sebastian's amazing. Heidi's great. Max von Sydow is a treasure, and his performance is great. Like, everyone's good in it, and it is good. It just has these really big problems. Like, I was thinking before the last 20 minutes, this was going to be my new favorite one.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, but like, I would disagree. I would actually say it is 100% worth watching.
All right. Well, I would like to talk about something that is absolutely not worth watching and no one should ever watch ever again.
Do you want to talk about it?
No.
And yet here we are.
And here we are because you made me watch
I
it.
feel like in every episode there's one where you have to define it as I made you watch it. And that's fair in this case because I did push kind of hard for this one because I had the feeling that it would be bad. And it was worse than I expected.
It was worse.
In 2008, there was a TV movie called Heidi Four Paws.
I was sitting in the room and you came in and you said, there's one more version that we have to watch. And I said, okay. And you said, it's from 2008. And I said, okay. And you said, it's only an hour long. And I said, okay. And you said, Heidi's a dog. They're all dogs. Okay, bye. And walked out of the room.
You'd already agreed.
I swear to God, this was the longest hour of my life. And I have had a baby. This was worse than having a baby. The time passed more slowly than times I have been in physical discomfort and distress.
Some say we're still watching it.
Some say.
Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was excruciating.
Yeah.
It was worse than I expected because what I kind of expected was live action, shot, like when I say on location, I mean at a location.
Like not entirely green screen.
Right? Like I assumed they would go to locations and actually take dogs there, and then they would do the animated mouth thing.
Yeah, like were you picturing sort of a wishbone situation?
Yeah. Except I knew they were all dogs.
Right.
Because again, we talked a lot about this while we were doing it. Our understanding of Wishbone is limited, but my understanding of Wishbone has always been everyone's a person but Wishbone.
Yeah.
He's the only dog.
Right.
This one, they're all dogs.
They're all dogs.
So
my understanding is they're all rescue dogs.
Almost all of them.
Yes.
Heidi was not a rescue dog.
Right.
Heidi was played by 8 puppies that were purebreds because they could only shoot for a week before they were too big to fit in the costumes.
Yeah.
And then they had to recast with another puppy.
Yeah. Okay.
My understanding is all of those puppies went on to beautiful lives and homes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So Heidi is a golden Labrador puppy.
But I think part of the reason that this is going to sound ridiculous. Some of the dog casting was not as good as you might expect. Was they might have had a limited pool to work from because I think there was just like here's these like 6 dogs from the pound. Like do what you will.
So like I was saying, I was expecting a movie shot on a location, like with a crew and cameras. What I wasn't ready for is that this was going to be the movie equivalent of the dogs wearing costumes calendar.
Yeah.
Because everything with the dogs is just, we put the dogs in front of a blue screen and we shot them for a few seconds and we're just going to composite them into all these different scenes. It felt, in terms of production values, like something you would see on Adult Swim.
Yeah.
Like it felt like Tim and Eric or something like that, which maybe isn't the best reference for everybody. But it felt like something on Adult Swim.
I found the way that their mouths moved very disturbing.
Well, I can only imagine that Jeremy Hunt is really offended by that because he was credited as animal mouth articulation. And so I'm given to understand he's the only person that worked on the animal mouth articulation, and I think he would be very sad. They all had like human teeth. It was
weird.
It was not good, but the animation throughout I was not ready for, and it was really, really bad. So it starts, and we're up in the Alps, and suddenly like all these animals start appearing behind trees, but it doesn't take very long before the animals stop looking like anything you would recognize as an animal.
Yeah.
It's like it went from, oh, that's a raccoon, I know what a raccoon is. Oh, that's a bear, I know what a bear is. Did you ever see the Basement Jaxx music video where they put human faces on all the monkeys playing in the band?
No.
That's the best thing I can describe. Is like, imagine like a monkey with a human face and how
Okay.
unsettling that would be.
Yeah.
That's what some of these animals looked like in the woods.
Yeah.
It was, I'm talking to the people at home. I know
Yeah.
you were there and
I was there.
and maybe are blocking it, but I think you remember it.
I just remember that the goats
I forgot about
were played by dogs.
all of them. They're little Pomeranians.
I guess I would have expected that the goats would be played by goats, because by this logic, any movie that you would see of Heidi that had a human cast, the goats would be played by people, which they're not ever.
Mhm.
I don't think in any version are the goats played by people. They're generally played by goats.
This movie is not trying to have an internal logic.
I also wrote down this is animal abuse, and I don't know what conditions on the set were like.
Well, the conditions were on the set. It was just in a room.
Yeah.
They were never anywhere. There's like one shot in the movie where it is very clearly, we took one of the puppies to a mountain and we put them in the grass and we shot them for 5 seconds.
But they're dressed up
with
in
a camera.
Yeah.
With a camera.
They're dressed up in costumes, though.
Yeah.
They're definitely wearing like costumes.
Yeah.
That's not CGI'd in
No.
after. The other thing that really confused me is that the dog that plays Clara is like 15 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, when a poodle gets really, like a toy poodle gets really old and scraggly.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't cast a puppy as Clara.
Clara was played by this is Clara, by the way, Sessahund, not Sesaman, because they're dogs. And she was a cockapoo mix.
Okay.
I have all the breeds here just in case you're curious.
No, I'm not curious. I don't care.
The grandfather was a crusty sheepdog. Can I actually ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is the reason you were so frustrated by the bad dog casting the fact that you were really happy with the casting of the grandfather?
The grandfather was really the perfect embodiment of a grandfather dog. I mean, he was like just an old, you know, the movie The Shaggy Dog? That's what he looked like. He looked like a shaggy dog.
But I feel like I remember when he showed up and you were like, okay, this is actually perfect dog casting.
Yeah.
And then you got mad at all the other ones for not being as good. And I feel like if that one hadn't been as good, you wouldn't have cared.
Well, there was about 10 seconds that I thought this was going to be like really book accurate. And I was thinking like maybe this is going to be like Wishbone. Because I actually they did a couple things that I was like, I think this is the only version that we've seen this like detail from the book.
It's the only one where the grandmama teaches Heidi how to pray.
Yeah.
It's the only one out of a dozen. Only one.
So
the fact that they're both dogs makes it kind of hard to take.
We're kind of working backwards through this, but there's like this little piece of narration at the beginning that I think really sums up a lot of my feelings about this, which is there's this narrator who for some reason kind of sounds like Sam Elliott in The Big Lebowski. I don't know why.
He's real like folksy and American.
Yeah.
So Heidi went up the mountain. That's where she met her grandfather.
Yeah, sounds just like that. And he's talking about he's sort of giving the backstory, and he's talking about Dee Dee, you know, Aunt Dee Dee, and he goes,
who's a beagle in this?
She wasn't a bad dog, but she wasn't a good dog either. And I was like, that's not wrong.
That's incredibly insightful writing. I remember you being really impressed at that.
I wrote it down. And also, someone pointed out that you're only the third person to ever review this on Letterboxd.
Yeah, not many people have taken the time to review this one. Let's talk about the cast for a second.
Oh my God.
I'm not talking about the dog cast. I'm not talking about the fact that Peter was a whippet or Dee Dee is a beagle or Sebastian was an apricot poodle. I'm not quite sure what that is. But let's talk about what some of the actual human actors playing these characters are.
Okay, I don't want to spend much more time on this.
Well, Megan Strange was playing Heidi, another grown-ass woman doing the voice of a little child.
A puppy.
Richard Kind is the grandfather.
Okay.
American treasure, Richard Kind, who we love dearly.
I have a question.
Yes. For me or just for the world?
For you.
To the universe?
I don't know if you know the answer to this. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
Okay.
But just in terms of like film production.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, Richard Kind, who's like a B-list actor, maybe A-list for Broadway, right? Like he's a New York guy.
I think he's B-list for Broadway and like C or D-list for Hollywood.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think he'd probably be the first person to agree with me.
But like a working actor, right?
Yeah, goddamn working actor.
A working
That's
actor,
right.
but like a New York working actor that his agent called him and said, "Hey, do you want to do a day
Yeah.
on this voiceover? You're going to be the grandfather in Heidi.
Mhm.
And by the way, it's a dog." And he was like, "Sure." And he probably wasn't even a day. He probably went down to a studio for like 2 hours and did these lines.
I don't know how long it was, but all I would say is I would be shocked if it was more than a day.
How much do you get paid for that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm guessing thousands.
Like thousands.
Thousands of dollars. Like the where this came up in the movie is the fact that Angela Lansbury plays the grandmama.
Right. I did. And I asked how much you. Right. We haven't even gotten to that yet. How much you pay Angela Lansbury for doing this?
I think 5 figures.
Like 10,000 for Angela Lansbury, like 5,000 for Richard Kind.
Maybe. Like I don't know. Angela Lansbury might have gotten more than that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But like
we should call her and ask.
I feel like 5 figures.
Yeah.
Certainly not 6 figures.
Low 5 figures.
But
though.
not 4 figures. Like she's not. Angela Lansbury's not doing this for $9,000.
Angela Lansbury does not get out of bed for less than $10,000.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So Richard Kind is the grandfather doing a fine job, I guess.
Sounding like Richard Kind.
He just sounds like Richard Kind, but kind of gruff.
Yeah. And also, like, we're not in the best position to appreciate him as the grandfather because we've been listening to Co-op the musical basically on repeat.
Yeah. I mean, everything I know Richard Kind from, he's playing Richard Kind.
Yeah.
He's playing that person. I'm seeing him stretch himself, and you know what? I hope he got paid money for this. One of the weirdest pieces of casting in this, it wasn't Steve Guttenberg as Sebastian, but also the fact that he had a French accent as Sebastian.
That was weird.
Steve Guttenberg, not great in this, but you know what? Whatever. Angela Lansbury, she showed up, she did her job. Whatever. That doesn't bother me that
Probably
much.
got a vacation out of it or something.
The one for me that didn't make any sense was Julian Sands as Peter, the child.
Yeah.
Julian Sands of Howard's End. You know, he was a grown man in 1990.
Yeah.
He is so old. He sounds it like he's just a grown man talking like a grown man, and Peter's a boy. He's a child.
Yeah.
I don't get it. And the fact that, like, this also isn't, he's not a nobody. He's not just some rando voice actor.
Yeah, no, they're like, oh my God, we got Julian
like,
Sands.
He's Julian Sands. Like, Julian Sands is he's a real actor. He's a name. I don't understand what he's doing here. I don't understand what he's doing there in every sense of the phrase. I don't understand why he got cast. And also, after he got cast, I didn't understand what he was doing.
Yeah. I don't often say this on the show because what is this show if not digging into things that perhaps don't bear the level of investigation that we are applying to them?
I can't tell if that's fair or unfair, but I'll allow it.
This does not bear digging into. It does not matter. Like, let's leave it. Let's leave Heidi 4 Paws.
Are you telling me to drop it?
I'm telling you, drop it. Leave it. Sit. Stay.
Okay, let's move on. In 2015, there was an animated series. I was very excited about this because it was on Netflix that I saw. And then I got really bummed out because basically there is an animation studio, a European animation studio that does like CG animation. And I think it's like French and German. And what they basically did was a remake of the anime. So all the character designs look exactly the same. It's just 3D.
Yeah.
And they did a season of like 30 episodes that are retelling the story of Heidi with some other stuff added. And then they did a second season after she's got back and that's the season that's on Netflix.
Right.
So I was really bummed about it. And then I was happy to find out, no, it's all on YouTube. So we basically skimmed through all of the first season on YouTube. We watched the first few episodes and then we kind of did a greatest hits throughout. And there were certainly a lot of things that we skipped. I also completely forgot to say this, even though we just spent a ton of time shitting on Heidi 4 Paws, it was written and directed by Holly Goldberg Sloan. I want to make sure that, for posterity, we say who did these things. But the 2015 animated series was created and developed by Jan van Rieselberg and Christelle Gonnar. And it looks like the anime.
Yeah.
And
the character design is very similar.
We watched a good amount of it. You and I had very different reactions to this.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to it?
I found it incredibly boring.
It's safe to say you did not care even a little.
Perhaps I was not in the right headspace for a 32 episode, very atmospheric, animated Heidi that was based on an anime that we had already kind of seen. Because it was the last thing we watched. And usually, by the time we get to the last thing, unless it's really good, I'm pretty over it.
Yeah.
Especially when we've done 12. All this to say, perhaps I was not in the right headspace. we finished our skimming and you turned it off and I said that was really boring. And that was sort of where I landed. Where
Mhm.
did you land?
I really liked it. Like, I was kind of surprised at how much I liked it because I had very low expectations for it. I felt like it was going to be kind of a low rent, modern animated show with really bad animation and just be kind of a cash grab. I was pleasantly surprised to find out it was kind of surprising and sweet and well made. And it's been like dubbed in a million languages. We watched the English dub of it, which I don't think we really lost anything by doing that. It's definitely that very modern show where it's not like when we were kids, because the cartoons that came out when we were kids, if they had a moral, the moral was very simplistic and black and white and tended not to age well.
Mm-hmm.
This one, though, is definitely one of the more modern shows where you have people involved who seem to have more of an interest in being like in tune with the way people's emotional states actually work.
Okay.
Like, I'll just throw an example of like a little kid show, Daniel Tiger.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of these shows and shows like Daniel Tiger's, you actually have people behind them saying like, well, no, like when you actually are talking about people being mad, like it's okay to be mad. That's a nuanced thing, and it's not just people are good or people are bad, which
Okay.
is like the morals we were getting from cartoons when we were kids.
Okay.
And I wasn't really ready for this to be kind of interesting emotionally. Like, no one's bad in this show.
Uh-huh.
Dita's not bad. Dita's in Frankfurt with her the entire time.
Yeah.
And Dita kind of loves her.
Yeah.
Like, she's genuinely sad to leave her with the grandfather. And when she comes back to get her, she's not doing it because she's going to get paid by the Sesamans, which is in a lot of the other versions. She's doing it because she genuinely wants what's best for Heidi.
Yeah.
And she gets to see her all the time because she loves Heidi.
Yeah.
And that's a choice to make.
Yeah.
And kind of everyone's nice, except for the three little shithead kids that live in the town who are the antagonists.
Yeah, but we skipped through most of that because they're not in the book, so we didn't watch a ton of the kid antagonists. Yeah, I don't know, sweetie. Like, you got something out of this that I did. Like, you're talking about like people writing about emotional truth, and I just did not get that from this at all.
I got it. I liked the way it started. Like, the whole, I was expecting like a shot for shot remake of the anime, and like all the characters' designs are identical. Even when the grandfather showed up, I remember you saying like, okay, well, that's the platonic ideal of what the grandfather should look like.
Sure.
But plot wise, it is not the anime.
Yeah.
Even though it has some of the same things, like it has the dog and it has the bird, but they're way more minor in this one than they are in the anime.
Yeah, there's no like 6-episode plot about like her getting the dog to love her. Like, the dog is just fine.
Yeah,
He's
the
a
dog likes her immediately. It's
Yeah.
very sweet. So plot-wise, it's not the same. So it doesn't start the same way. And the way it starts is with her and Didi on the train heading to Dorfley, and she's going to live with her grandfather, and they meet. Dita always meets a friend
Yeah.
that she can talk to about all this stuff. But the friend has a little kid who is
Mhm.
from Dorfley. And she and the other kid go to a different part of the train and are talking. And so the very first time that Heidi hears about the grandfather from anybody, it's from this other kid telling her about how awful he is.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually kind of interesting because in every version, Heidi doesn't know anything about him until she meets him for the first time.
Yeah.
Dita is shielding her from all of this information. So in this one, she actually is like a little nervous to meet the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really smart. There's this thing with a doll that really surprised me because it was really sweet where like she leaves her doll on the platform and the conductor is kind of a character throughout all of the show that
Yep.
they interact with every now and then. And it's, a year later and Dita's coming back and the
And
conductor's
he's like, here's your doll.
here's that doll. I saved it. It was that little girl you were with a year ago.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? And she's like, oh, yes, it was. And Heidi is reunited with her doll. Like, it's very sweet.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect it. And it was kind of nice to get. I don't know. Like, I guess my feeling about it was if in a few years Calvin said, hey, what's this animated Heidi show? I would say, you know what, buddy? You go ahead and watch that because I think this is a good show and I can stand behind it.
Sure.
And I think you'll enjoy it. If a kid told me today that they liked this show, I would have no problem with that. I think it was kind of a nice little show for kids.
It was a nice little show for kids. I was not in a place to be emotionally moved by it.
We came out of Heidi Four Paws and I was just I hated it so much.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked liking something.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Let's talk about something else that we both really liked.
Also in 2015, there was a Swiss, I can't tell if it was a Swiss production or like a Swiss-German production, but either way, movie, Heidi, directed by Ellen Sponer, written by Petra Biondina Volp, starred Anouk Stefan as Heidi. She quit acting after this. Like, she did no more acting. There's a number of people in it who I don't really know that well, because there's a lot of, like, German actors in this. Everyone's good.
Mhm.
The only person we knew going in is, I would say, like, would you say he's friend of the pod at this
Officially,
point?
this is third appearance, officially friend of the pod.
Bruno Ganz
R.I.P.
as the grandfather, R.I.P. We saw him in Nosferatu, saw him in Wings of Desire, seen him in this. You've seen him on the internet as Hitler,
Literally Hitler.
angry in his bunker. I love Bruno Ganz in movies. There are a few actors like him. He's just natural and confident.
He has a sweetness to him
Mhm.
that you would not get if you had only seen Downfall.
Yes.
I saw him first in Downfall.
Mhm.
Downfall was like
The Hitler movie.
the Hitler movie. It's just like one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Mhm.
Like, because he gives such an unbelievably good performance.
Mhm.
I think I said this about him when we did Wings of Desire.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes when people are acting in other languages that I don't speak, I sometimes find it hard to tell what the quality of their performance is because I can't understand what they're saying.
Mhm.
That was not the case for his performance in
Yeah.
Downfall. But he has a very sweet quality to him
Mhm.
that I thought was excellent in this role of the grandfather. And he died like recently.
Yeah.
He was really old. He did not look very well
Mhm.
in this. He looked pretty old.
Mhm. I mean, you said we both liked it. I'll go a step further. In my opinion, this is by far the best version of Heidi that we watched.
I mean, it's the only one that made you cry.
Not only the only one, made me cry twice.
Yep.
I loved it so much. I will say how we watched it, because I had to apologize to you for this. And I'm just going to say this to anyone. If you haven't seen this one, I bet a lot of people haven't seen it who are listening, especially people who live in the States. You can see it pretty easily. It's like on Amazon Prime streaming. You can rent it on any, like American streaming service. The problem is the version that's available on all of them is a dubbed version. I jumped on Amazon Prime today just to kind of get a sense of what it was like, because I knew I didn't want to watch a dubbed version.
We usually don't like to watch dubbed.
Yeah. Especially because Bruno Ganz is in it.
Yeah,
He's just an interesting actor, and I don't want to see anyone else interpreting his performance. I went and I watched 10 minutes of it. I can say that we would not have liked it as much if we had watched the dub version.
So what did we watch?
What I figured out that I could do, we are Disney Plus subscribers. This episode brought to you by Disney Plus and NordVPN.
We're not getting any money.
We're not getting any money from anything. If you've ever listened to a podcast or watched any YouTube video, you know about VPNs. If you don't have a VPN, they are pretty great. Whether you go with NordVPN or ExpressVPN or Surfshark or whatever.
Don't say the names. They're not giving us any money.
Yeah, but they don't. Listen, it's fine. What I figured out I
Give
could
them
do,
free advertising.
I VPN'd to Germany. Disney Plus in Germany has the real version of it in German, and it has English subtitles. So we watched it on my computer, which we normally don't like doing. But we watched the whole movie through German Disney Plus. And I'm so glad we did it, because this movie is amazing and fantastic, and I loved it, and it's just so good. Would you like to do some quadrants? Or would you like to talk about this movie for a second?
Just talk about the movie for
Let's
a hot
talk-
second.
Let's talk about this movie for a hot second. What are some things you liked about it?
Probably like the same things that you did. I just felt like we had seen a bunch of movies that got some things right and some things wrong. And it felt like this one kind of got everything right. Like
Mhm.
they got the tone right. They got the casting right. The set was right.
Mhm.
The script was good. I really liked the Miss Rottenmeier in this one quite a lot. I
Mhm.
actually thought she was a contender for the prettiest Miss Rottenmeier.
She was very pretty. She's not Jane Seymour, but she's very pretty.
But she didn't
So
strike me.
Katharina Schutler.
Yeah, but she didn't strike me as like she was definitely like cast young for Miss Rottenmeier,
Mhm.
but she didn't strike me as like too young or like inaccurately young. She was just a young woman, and also she was probably 30. Like she wasn't like
Mhm.
very, very young. But I just appreciated that she was she was just in a really good job. She was very pretty too.
Yeah.
But not pretty. I guess what I'm saying is not pretty in a way that felt unrealistic to the character. Like, why
Yes.
shouldn't Miss Rottenmeier be pretty and trying to run this household and be like taken seriously,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. This did the thing that I was talking about in the first episode with the 1974 one, that like you can have one, because you talked about the 74 BBC one as being like very, very book accurate.
Yeah.
And I brought up the idea that you can look at the book and either say, this is not dramatic, I'm going to add drama. Or you could look at it and say, no, there's drama here. I think what I need to do is I need to show what's in the book, but actually show it in a compelling way.
Yeah.
And this decides to do that. So it doesn't really add many things. It changes a couple of little things here and there that I thought were really smart. But here's an example of a thing that is just straight from the book. In every version, the grandmother talks to Heidi about the fact that she can't eat the hard brown bread because her teeth aren't strong enough. And that's why she likes the white, soft rolls. And then Heidi steals tons of rolls and then brings rolls back to the grandmother, right?
Yep.
It's in every single one. Did this one do the thing to you that it did to me, that it actually made me question, wait, why did I just buy it in every single other version that the grandmother is saying that the bread's too hard for her to eat?
Right, because in this one, the bread was very hard.
Yeah.
Very hard. Like someone tapped it with their hands and it was extremely hard. And also the grandmother didn't have any teeth.
She had 2 teeth. 2 teeth in her whole head. And I bought it. Like, it actually did a very, very simple thing that is directly from the book, but it happened to do it in a way that made it more believable to me than anything else we watched. And that's one of 100 examples through this movie. Do you want to talk about just like Heidi?
She was just so cute. Like she just did talk about like a kid with a lot of personality.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't like overly sweet,
No.
particularly.
Just really expressive.
And you kept saying she looks like Frodo because she had this big head of curly hair, and one of the things that they did very reasonably, but I don't think I've seen this in any other version, is they dressed her in like little pants and like a little shirt and a little vest for being up on the mountain because it's cold up there, and she's like running around on the rocks and stuff. So she needed to wear very practical clothing.
So she's always running around barefoot in her little
vest,
shorts and vest and like billowy shirt.
Yeah,
she just looks like Frodo.
She looks like Frodo. She's really cute and really adorable, and just has a lot of personality. And you can see why everybody loves this this cute little girl.
There's like a moment where she finally makes it back from Frankfurt. There's just a really quick little shot where the grandfather is toasting some cheese and scraping the toasted cheese onto a piece of bread, and she takes a bite, and like the smile that goes across her face is one of the most genuine things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it, like, if you're trying to sell to me, this little girl has wanted this for months and months and months, and now she's finally home and she's getting one of the simple pleasures that she missed.
Yeah.
It sold it beautifully.
Yeah.
She's so good in this. Can I say another, like, just a few choices that it makes that I really like?
Yeah.
When she gets to Frankfurt, one of the things that they decided to do, Clara, she's so good in this. I already said that. Anouk Stefan is Heidi. Clara is Isabel Ottman. Clara says, I want you to come with me. We're going to come into this room that's dark, that's always locked, but come on in. And she brings her into this dark room, and up on the wall is a big painting of Clara when she was younger with her mother, before her mother died.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is one of those things where, did anybody up until this moment ever think to actually show us a picture of her mom?
Like she's going on an emotional journey because her mom died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is the only one that decided to do that. And it's kind of fantastic because the painting doesn't just represent her mom, but it also represents a time in her life where she could walk before she got sick.
Yeah.
And then her dad gets to have a moment with the painting later.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful little moment with no dialogue where
Yeah.
it's just him and the painting. And it does a thing that I didn't see in any of the other ones that was beautiful.
And they do a fun thing in this one where I feel like in every other version, Clara is either super, super sweet or super bratty. Because there were a couple that she's super bratty. The 1993 one, she like keeps having these like fake. We didn't even really talk about this, but she keeps having these like fake attacks that they have to bring her like her inhalers and stuff. Like there's this whole medical.
Fake.
No, she works herself up and then she like can't breathe and they have to like do a bunch of medical things to her.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the crazy like steampunk inhaler.
Yeah.
That maybe was incredibly accurate
Who
for the
can say?
time.
So it's been like either that or like she throws these horrible tantrums all the time or she's super, super sweet. In this one, she's super, super sweet for a while, like, because she is really enjoying being with Heidi, and Heidi actually takes her out with her when she goes up, like, to go up the church tower, and they go on this, like little adventure together.
It was beautiful because just super quick sidebar on that one, the thing that I loved about it is that it's making Clara so much more active, but also they each get to have their own part of that adventure, because while Heidi is going up to the top of the tower and finding out that she can't see the mountains, Clara is down at the bottom getting the kittens.
Right.
Someone gives them to her.
Right.
So Heidi's not even the one who gets the kittens. Claire is the one who's doing that.
Right.
And it just makes them both so much more active.
But Clara actually goes on a bit of a journey because when the father is back, Heidi's like sleepwalking and the grandmama is telling her son like, hey, you got to send this kid back. She's not happy. The grandmama is actually really great in this too. She's really sweet. And like, she's forming this relationship with Heidi, who's clearly not happy. And then the doctor is like, this girl is sleepwalking. You have to send her back. She's not well. Like, she's going to die in your house. And throughout it, he's going, no, I can't do that to Clara. I couldn't do that to Clara. She loves her. Like, I couldn't. And they're making him feel guilty about, oh, you just want this girl to live with Clara to fill in, the fact that you're never here, you're always away.
And I was so plant that seed because I do want to come back to that.
Then there is a point where he kind of sleeps on it and he's like, I gotta send this girl home. And he breaks the news to Clara sort of at breakfast, and she kind of has a tantrum, even though we've never really seen Clara have a tantrum before. This Clara, have a tantrum before, but this is really big news and it really upsets her. And usually she's used to getting, I think like she's really very much used to getting her way and having people do the thing that she wants to do. And this is maybe the first time she's been told, no, you can't have this thing that you want. And it really sends her father into this whole thing of like, wow, I can't sacrifice people to make my daughter happy. I'm not happy with my daughter's reaction, but maybe I'm the one that sort of prompted this. So anyway, like I feel like they both kind of go on an emotional journey where there are some levels in what they're going through that is a little bit more nuanced than some of the other versions.
Yeah. But I love the fact that you brought up the thing with the dad, because this was the only ones that actually has anybody say to the dad, hey, your daughter's sick. You shouldn't be gone as much as you are.
Yeah.
None of the other ones did that. And like his mom kind of takes him to task for it. And he's nice, but he's also kind of a dick for a good amount of the time. He has to go on a journey.
Yeah.
Like when he shows up at the end and he shows up at the top of the mountain, he's really shitty to the grandfather about like, look at this awful place that my daughter's been in. I need her immediately.
And he's mad at his mother too, because she was the one that brought. Oh, the grandmama drinking with the grandfather was like the best thing in any version.
Oh, it's so good.
They're just like pouring her, I don't know, schnapps or whatever. So we were worried when Heidi came back after being in Frankfurt, because we had seen now like two versions that we had liked up to this point. Well, one that we didn't like as much, but we were worried that he was going to do the thing where he rejects her. And we were looking at each other and you said to me, like, I don't put it past this version to you didn't trust it.
Yeah.
You didn't trust it 100%.
I'd been hurt
You'd
too
been
many
hurt.
times.
And she comes running up the mountain and he's like milking the goats or whatever. And he's
up a ladder holding a piece of wood.
That's right.
He's up a ladder holding a piece of wood because he's fixing the roof. And she comes running out of the woods up to him and just goes, grandfather. And the look on his face doesn't show anything. He's just shocked.
Yeah.
We don't know if these feelings are positive or negative. And then we get this wide shot and he just drops the wood. It's just because he's too shocked.
Yeah.
And he drops it. And he just staggers down the ladder and just
very old.
They just run at each other full speed, and she leaps in his arms, and he is so overjoyed to have her back, and he cannot believe that it's actually happening. And I cried.
Yes.
Because it's beautiful and perfect.
And then we felt better because it's
so much better.
The movie had not betrayed us. And then there's the scene where like the grandmother's up there, Clara is up there, and he's just so happy. He's so cute. He's just like so happy that they're all there. He's so happy to have guests. He never has guests. And he like kind of like totters around the back and comes back with this like jug and these two little glasses for the grandmother. And I don't know what it is. Schnapps?
Like grain alcohol or something.
Like he's clearly like brewed it himself. And they're like watching the children play, but they're like taking shots, and it's really funny.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Can I just call out another? Because we're here at the end. Like this is the last one.
Yeah.
A couple of things from a writing standpoint. One, in all the versions, there are a couple things that happen when she's in Frankfurt. So one of the things that happen is the grandmama comes to visit, and the grandmama encourages her to learn how to read and helps teach her how to read, right?
Yep.
And the other thing that happens is the whole ghost subplot.
The
ghost, which we didn't even really talk about in this episode, but we talked about it at length in the first one.
It does not matter.
It's done really, really well in this one, and it's really funny. The first ghost scene is hilarious because it's just Rottenmeier and Tinette like freaked
Screaming,
out in
yeah.
the dark. It's really good. And this Sebastian is also it doesn't reach the heights of the 2005 version for me, but this Sebastian is also pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
They make the decision to actually have those two plots happening concurrently. So it feels way less episodic. It just feels like this is the story that's happening to these characters.
Yeah.
Do you know what it reminded me of? Let's go back to Little Women, 1994. One of the things that I thought was really smart in that screenplay is that they look at this very, very episodic story, and one of the things they were trying to figure out was how can we combine these episodes so that it doesn't feel like this happens, then that ends.
Yeah.
Now this happens, and that ends. Because that's how Heidi ends up feeling a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But by having those two things happening at the same time, it just makes it feel more like a natural story that has a really good flow to it.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that. One of my favorite things, there is a moment when Heidi is in Frankfurt and she's with Clara, and they're sitting at their end of the table, and Rottenmeier's across the table, and Clara is helping Heidi because there's all the different forks and spoons
so
and
she's
everything.
like pointing to each one, like, what do you have to do?
And
like, what do you use?
Right, and they're doing this very physical little mime thing where she's like, you pick it up. Like, I'm using my voice, but she's not. Like, she's you pick this up like this, and then you do this, and then you do, and then you use the napkin to wipe your mouth. You do everything. It's cute. Like, it's a cute little moment, and I really liked it. But then the payoff is an hour later when Claire is visiting up at the top of the mountain, and they're sitting outside the hut, and they've both been poured a big bowl of goat's milk.
Steaming bowl of hot, fresh goat's milk.
Right, a big hunk of cheese and bread, and Heidi is doing the exact same thing and teaching her, now you take the bowl and you tip it back, now you've got milk all over your face, so now you take your hand and you wipe it all off, and it's just physical. Like, no words are being spoken, and it's this beautiful little bookend to that. I loved it. I cannot say how much I loved it.
Yeah.
And then, let's talk about Clara walking. I got really scared because Peter, who we haven't really talked about.
Yeah, Peter was like a weird man-child in this.
I mean, he's good. He's great.
He's good.
Like, he's really, really, really good in this.
Look to him.
It's an interesting little look to this kid. He breaks the wheelchair. Oh, and
we were like, this Peter's gonna break the wheelchair like within 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it's the only one. Like, not everything translates perfectly because I don't know exactly what it would be in Swiss German, but it certainly sounded like as soon as the thing crashed, he's looking down the mountain and he just goes, shit, and then runs off. Of all, the wheelchair smashes in spectacular fashion. This isn't one of those ones where it like rolled 20 feet and then kind of fell apart. Like, it rolls down and falls off a cliff and down a ravine, and it smashes into a million pieces, and it is glorious. But then they do the thing where the grandfather carries her up to the top of the mountain so she can hang out with Heidi and Peter while they're tending the goats, because he is, of course, a shepherd. And there's a scene where Heidi says, I'm going to run over here to do something. So Peter's gone off in one direction. Heidi's going to run in one direction, and they're going to leave Clara sitting on a rock.
And you went, oh, she's going to fall down the ravine, because you still did not yet trust this movie.
I'd been hurt too many times.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that that's what was going to happen. And maybe one of those beautiful moments in the movie, I'm going to describe it. I still think you should watch it if you haven't seen it, because me describing it can't possibly ruin it because it's so good. Claire's sitting there, and it gets really quiet, and she's looking out at this little, like, goat that is hanging out on a rock, and I worry, like, oh, is the goat going to fall off, and that's what she's going to go run after? And she suddenly looks down at her foot because she feels something, and there's a little butterfly on her foot. The butterfly flies off and starts to fly up into the air, and she's kind of going after it because she wants to touch it, because this is not a thing that happens to her very much. And suddenly she finds herself standing because she was just so interested in this beautiful thing up at the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And then Heidi comes out, and she's like, Clara, holy shit! And Peter's like, holy shit! You're walking, and they help her learn how to walk, and it's great. It is exactly how you do something like that.
Yeah.
It is beautiful and visual, and I loved it, and it was great. And then when the dad shows up and she comes walking out around with Heidi holding her hand, because he's just been yelling at the grandfather and the grandmama about this terrible place that his daughter's been in. And then his daughter comes walking around, and he loses it. And he goes over to her, and he starts bawling and hugging her. And the thing he says in that moment is the second thing that made me cry in this movie. And it's the only time in any version that he's ever said this. He says, I'm sorry. He says, please forgive me for not being there for her as often as he needed to.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a beautiful emotional arc, and the movie ends with this beautiful shot of Heidi like running through the mountain. And it's so, so good. If you can only watch the dub, I guess watch it. It's really not as good.
If
but
you have a VPN, most people have VPN the Venn diagram of
Yeah.
people that have both Disney Plus and a VPN and are listening to the show is not like small.
No.
So, do with that what you will.
Go on your device, VPN to Germany, sign on to Disney Plus, and watch Heidi.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to speak for you. This was my favorite version, and I think this is the best one we watched, and I was so happy that it happened last.
It was very good. Well, I think we should wrap up Heidi. We're going to have to do all of the quadrants for everything.
Let's do it. Okay, 1937, Shirley Temple. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Do you think it was successful?
Yes.
Yes, of course it was. Little Dutch girl thing was kind of weird for me.
That's all right.
1952, Swiss-German version. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Yes.
Was it successful?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good. 1968 TV movie. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Was it successful?
No.
I think it's on the line. It had stuff we liked.
It was just so funny that you were like, nothing could be weirder than this. And then so many things were weirder than that.
And that's what makes it so endearing
Yeah.
to me. Heidi, Girl of the Alps, the 1974 anime series. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Yeah, I think so.
Like deeply.
Yeah, I think
it's a really
certainly.
loving translation. Is it successful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of these nice ones are. Yeah.
The Story of Heidi, the late 70s English dub recut butchering of the anime series. Do you think they cared about the source material?
No.
Was it successful?
No.
Lord, no. 1974 BBC miniseries. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Someone did.
Someone, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it successful?
Yes.
Absolutely. The New Adventures of Heidi, 1978 TV, movie, musical. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Do I think they cared about the 1881 book Heidi by Johanna Spyri?
Uh-huh.
No.
Was it successful?
Weirdly,
No.
no.
Also no.
Also no. Also no. Not even by any. I was gonna say maybe by the standard of not being Heidi, but no. Even in that case, no.
No, it was garbage. Heidi's song, 1982. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Weirdly, I think someone must have.
I disagree.
Yeah.
Like Charlotte's Web felt like they cared about the source
yeah.
material. This felt like they were just looking for something that was about a kid.
I guess so.
That's
All
just
right.
my feeling.
All
That's just
right.
my feeling.
I put it on the line.
Was it successful?
No.
No. We're in agreement on that. All right. 1993 miniseries.
Did someone involved in the production care about Heidi the book?
I guess someone did.
I think someone must have.
Yeah, I think so. Was it successful?
No.
This show feels that it was not.
I feel that it was not.
Mhm.
Say no more about it.
2005 movie, Max von Sydow, Emma Bolger. Do you think they cared about the source material?
I do.
Yeah, I do too. Was it successful?
Yes.
Yes. Despite its flaws, despite the power lines.
Oh my God.
If only for Sebastian, I swear. Heidi Forepaws.
I don't
No and no?
know
Just-
how you can ask me that with a straight face.
Just no and no?
Just please disqualified.
2015 animated series, the CG one. Do you think they cared about the source material? I think they did.
You think so?
I really got the sense that they cared about the source material, not just the anime, but like actually
All right.
the real source material. It felt very loving to me.
All right.
And is it successful?
I mean, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like it seemed like a perfectly nice kid show.
Sure.
Good for them. 2015 movie, Bruno Ganz, Anouk Stefan. Do you think they cared about the source material?
Yes.
Maybe more than anybody did. Was it successful?
Maybe more than anybody was.
It's just so beautiful, and I loved it so much. And you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it.
You got to do the thing that we did.
Hey, we did it.
It was a lot. It was
Mhm.
more than I expected. I did not expect that we were going to have to watch Heidi Forepaws when we set out on this journey. And are we better for it?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
No.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
I feel much stronger as a person because of it.
Great.
Well, this has been Adapt or Perish. If you'd like to find us online, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AdaptCast. You can join our groups on Facebook and Goodreads, and you can also find and follow me on Letterboxd, as well as listen to my other show, Multiplex Time Machine, which comes out weekly for this year. If you have anything to say that's longer than a tweet, you can always send an email to adaptorperishcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, there are 3 great ways you can do it. First, tell a friend. Second, a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice would be greatly appreciated. Third, we are on Patreon. This show will always be free, but if you become a patron, you can get access to Adapt or Perish Plus, our bonus show that releases every other week between episodes of this show, and our patron-only Slack community. It's been a lot of fun, and all of the details are at patreon.com/adaptcast.
She wasn't a bad dog, but she wasn't a good dog either.
I can't believe you quoted Heidi Forepaws. After all of that, you quote Heidi Forepaws at me.
Bye, everybody.